some insight from our experts today. And I would like to introduce them one by one now, joining us also from different countries in the world. So first of all, we have Mr. Ayub Kara. He's the president of the Economic Peace Center in Israel and a former member of the Knesset for the Likud party and a minister of communications of Israel. Then we are also joined by Alexander Bregin, a doctor from Russia, and Mr. Roy Rekvava, a doctor from the Scientific Research Institute of Cardiology and Internal Diseases, joining us from Almaty in Kazakhstan. Then we have Mr. Paul Robert Vogt, a world-renowned professor and doctor practicing at the Hirslanden Clinic here in Switzerland. He's a specialist in cardiac surgery, and I'm also based here in Zurich, Switzerland. My name is Martina Fox. I'm your moderator today. I'm a business journalist and TV presenter. So welcome everybody for this very important webinar and discussion on COVID-19. I would first of all like to give a couple of housekeeping rules, which are that the webinar will last for 60 Swiss minutes until 4 o'clock local time, Central European time. And all of our gentlemen will have a short presentation, PowerPoint slides that they will introduce their expertise about, and then we will have a short discussion among the panelists here as well. So it's my great honor now to give the word to Ayub for his opening remarks. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure, first of all, to be part in this event in Zoom. And it's my pleasure more that with good friends that we beginning different cooperation around the medicine in Europe and all the world. Exactly with my center. My center is important today center of what we call it the cooperation between technologies and different areas in medicine in Israel and with our neighbors, with all the world also. And this is opportunity to speak about the corona values and of course everything that the world needs to stop diseases and of course to stop terrorism with what we call cooperation, economic and technologies and everything around that.
Thank you so much. So I would like to give the word then to Alexander Bregin, joining us from Russia. Alexander, are you there? Please feel free to introduce your area of expertise as well.
Yes, okay. Dmitry, please my presentation. Maybe.
We are going to bring up your presentation. Wonderful.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Talk about the situation in Russia. Thank you.
Yes. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the corona pandemic has revealed many problems, not only in the health system of various countries, but also in the health organization on Earth as a whole. However, this epidemic has raised a large number of questions, both for society as a whole and for each individual. Of course, if this lesson is not learned for humanity, and we don't draw the right conclusions, when the if civilization will not be able to adequately respond to the danger and may face the frame of degradation and extinction in the future. How did the corona epidemic proceed in Russian Federation? First, I would like to note that there are clearly two stages in proliferation with different consequences in Russia. The first was in February, when the infection spread from China. Strict anti-epidemic measures were applied to all residents. Examination by medical teams in airports, including microbiology, 2-week quarantine at home or in the observation room, with the issues of prescription from the chief sanitary doctor, 14 days of observation at home of all contact. As a result, single case of infection without progression were registered in the Russian Federation for entire month of February. But the second stage began in March, when the source of infection was people who came from Europe, mainly from Italy and Spain. And such citizens were no longer subjected to such strict measures, and the emphasis was placed on the examination of people with signs of respiratory diseases. And the infection began to grow, reaching maximum by the beginning of May. What is the situation now? Today, Russia has more than 370,000 infected, and half of this in Moscow, 171,000. The country has passed the peak of morbidity, and the number of cases is constantly decreasing, especially in Moscow, in 2 weeks more, with 2.5 times. More than 142,000 people recovered. 4,000 each. It's about 1% of those infected, or 2.7 per 100,000 population. Note that the level of corona testing in one of the high in the world, about 10 million tests were performed. And at the same time, more than half of people with corona infection was asymptomatic and did not need treatment. In terms of mortality rates, Russia is approximately on a par with countries such as Israel, South Korea, Japan, and Germany. In the initial analysis, the conclusion is what those countries where mass testing and isolation of sick people was quickly deployed, combined with the higher discipline of a nation, with allowed to avoid large casualty and quickly reduce the level of infection. What are the first, please, next slide. What are the first lessons of the corona pandemic? The first, no country in the world can cope with a pandemic alone. The international medical community is condemning cooperation on the entire spectrum of issues and problems. An international medical institute should be established based on a modern research base, which must respond quickly to any potential infections threat. Second, those countries where the state healthcare system is vitally absent or minimized, the most difficult situation with COVID developed. If we want to continue successfully facing new challenges, every country and every person must understand the value of this system. In the structure of the state system of medicine, it's important place should be given to a modern anti-epidemic service with a powerful laboratory base. The current issue is availability of multi-special infectious diseases hospitals in the country, even if partially preserved during not epidemic time. Each country needs to have a constantly replenishing strategic stock of personal protective equipment. And next, new telemedicine technologies that allow remote monitoring of patient condition and making correct diagnostic decisions are in demand. The plus of telemedicine, getting the doctor information online, the lack of contact of medical personnel with a patient suspected of infection, unimportance of action location of the patient, and etc. Of course, this technology will develop as most effective in modern conditional, and especially in the conditional of epidemics. They are also important for monitoring the health of patients for a long time after infection. 5. Preventive health care is becoming the most important direction for both nation and individual. The example on Russian Federation, where permanent preventive vaccination at the level of state program, including live vaccines, covers all age group of a population, shows how important it is to form an immune response in the population. This is also why the number of severe cases and deaths from corona in Russian Federation is much lower than in the world. And of course, people with chronic disease with risk factors in the first place were hit by corona. And no one can predict the consequences of infections for them. Prevention of chronic diseases in people of all age is also becoming an important task. Therefore, we believe that international health centers that use modern technology, including telemedicine, promote a healthy lifestyle, and provide preventive, rehabilitation, and recovery service will be demanded in the near future all over the world. Right now, we are working on an international project of such at International Medic Rehabilitation Center future in a unique resort location in South Russia in Krasnodar region. And the problem of rehabilitation of people who have undergone corona can be successfully solved in such centers. Thank you very much for your attention and help all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alexander Bragin, joining us from Russia. And we're going to head straight over to Kazakhstan. We are joined by Dr. Roin Rekvava from the Scientific Research Institute of Cardiology and Internal Diseases. You also have a PPT presentation, I believe, so let's bring that up and then we are ready for you.
Great. Hello all. I mean, 20 seconds for share my presentation.
While you bring that up, I will just say that if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to Dimitri from the Greater Caspian Association, and we can include them afterwards in the discussion. So if you have any questions, please send them to us and we are happy to answer them. Roin, the floor is yours.
So thank you very much. My name is Roin Rekvava. I'm origin from Georgia, but now living in Kazakhstan. And I am cardiologist, cardiac electrophysiologist. It means we are treating some arrhythmias and other things from vessels, through the vessels, and doing some radiofrequency ablations, etc. But today I have another topic, as you all know. So the coronavirus has turned our lives upside, and it will be too hard to return to the past life. Let me remind you some recommendations from the Human Health Organization, that we should avoid close contact to each other and avoid the crowds, I mean meetings and traveling and etc. We now should less touch our eyes, our mouth, nose, and etc. So it's very interesting that we should wash our hands. It was important before coronavirus, of course, but now became more important. Very important thing is protect each other. It's key keywords from the key message from the Human Health Organization. And as we know, we seek information. So as you see, but forget about the bad things and let me remind you about positive in this situation. There is the dolphin and it's the Venice. So Venice people some people never see the dolphin in the Venice Channel. It's a positive from the coronavirus situation. This is the city, Almaty, where I am now. And before pandemic, it was very polluted. Now weather is better and air is better, and it's one of the positive from this side. But let me talk about the future, because future is very important. Future is very important for us. Where is the medicine is going? And digital medicine is very important in the future. I mean, mobile health, application, sensors, online therapy. It's very important for us because life is changing, everything is changing, and medicine should transformate the meaning. Digital health, it means the medical recorders, hand ultrasound systems, and some ECG recorders also. So medicine became more applicable, more digital, and etc. There is some ecosystems for the digital health. We should know about this. I mean, in terms of smart, it's so-called like smart hub, when the database, knowledge, applications are involved. It's like smart hub that we should use digital medicine more and more in our life. We will use this. Okay, my presentation is over. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Roy. That was very, very insightful and very broad in terms of, we get different aspects, and we see that, like the human body, it's one ecosystem: digital, traditional medicine, and so on. And of course, cooperation that Dr. Alexander has mentioned before is so important between all the different parts. I would now like to go to Paul Robert Vogt, our doctor from the Hirslanden Clinic here in Switzerland, for his presentation as well. Paul, can you hear us okay? Paul, I think we have to unmute you. You're still on mute. Yes. Hello, Paul.
Hello. Hi. Hi together. Can you upload my presentation?
We're just uploading Paul's presentation as well, so please bear with us.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for invitation. And of course, I would send my greetings to Ayob. I would send my greetings to Alexander. I met some times ago. We have been separated by Corona, of course, but I can assure you that we will continue to cooperate together. You know, as soon as we will be able to fly, then we will do it, of course. And I wish you that you will stay healthy in the meantime. So I should talk something about COVID-19, and the question is if we can contain this pandemic or if this is a hydra. The hydra means it's a water snake from Greek mythology. There's a lot of heads, and if you are cutting a head, there is a new one coming. Here you can see this is the responsible bat. There are more than 1,000 different bats in the world, 20% of mammalians, and they have all the dangerous viruses are sitting on them, like Ebola, like MERS, like SARS, like rabies, and so this is one of the problems. Next. Okay, first of all, these are very important. I talk a bit about if it's a laboratory or if it's a natural virus. These are the important publications you should read. It's about how in the laboratory the SARS coronavirus was synthetically changed with a spike protein, which is more aggressive in connecting to human alveolar cells. This research has been done in the United States together with a group from Wuhan and together with a Swiss researcher. Go back again. Go back again. Yeah, the left upper part, you see the protein origin of SARS coronavirus. You should read this paper. You will easily find it. This is explaining where this virus is coming from, that the virus is coming from the nature. Next slide. So you see here the person in discussion now is Xi Zhengli, and this is the Wuhan Biosafety Lab. And Xi Zhengli was researching more than 10 years in all these caves in China from the bats, and she was able to find out that the SARS infection was caused by a coronavirus. And they had the first cases in Wuhan with an unknown virus. She did fly back from Shanghai, where she was in a meeting. She is the real expert, and she's called China Woman, and she's the real expert in coronavirus. And she was assuring that all the coronaviruses they work in Wuhan laboratory is completely different from this COVID-19. And this is also the opinion of the majority of the prominent virologists in the world. So it should be clear for me, I guess it's clear this is a natural jumped over from animals to human beings. Here, this is a table you need some time to study it. I just want to explain all the measures which have been taken by China, by South Korea, and note in the lower part, they didn't do any economic lockdown. And on the other side, you can see the measures what Italy, Spain, France, and United States and United Kingdom have taken to fight the pandemic, and you can see the differences in the measures, and so you can also calculate the difference in the infected people and in the death toll of these countries. Okay, it needs some time, but please study all the interventional, non-pharmaceutical interventions to fight the pandemic. Okay, next. Okay. So you can see that this is Hubei province with Wuhan. I personally was many times in Wuhan. I had a professorship in Wuhan, and I also did study and got information from the neighborhood provinces in China. And because they had a strict travel ban and strict isolation, I can tell you that the number of infected people, let's say in Anhui province or so, was very low, 990,000 people and 6 dead patients only. So you can see that just China done around Wuhan has worked perfectly with regard to the number of infected people in all the neighborhood provinces. Nowadays, there are some outbreaks, as you have heard, in Jilin province, in Shulan, and in Harbin, in Heilongjiang province, which is in northeast of China, and which is North Korea and Russian border. And of course, China is undertaking the same strict measures just to prevent the spread of the viruses in these regions. You have to know that the primary strategy of China has always been to eradicate the virus, and not like in Western Europe, only to contain the virus, which has severe consequences. Next. This is the disease course. You can see it starts with fever and cough, and it comes with dyspnea. Eventually, the patient has to go to the intensive care station. They need to have invasive ventilation. So if you want to know the mortality rate, in my opinion, is not yet clear, then you have to count the number of newly infected people in day 1 and divide by the death rate in day 16 to 20. And this is giving you the average of the mortality rate. So from the basic numbers seen in John Hopkins tables or so, you cannot calculate it. But the mortality probably is between 2 to 6%. Next. So this is the very basic information how usually we should fight the pandemic. The first step: without contact, there is no infection. It means, as you all know, social distancing, mask, and disinfection solution. The second step is the detection of the virus. You have to do mass testing, and you have to have a tracking app to follow those who are suspected to be infected. If once someone is infected and he is not sick, he has to go to quarantine. If he is sick, he must be treated in the hospital on the regular ward or on the ICU. And of course, you have to disinfect all the surfaces of the infrastructure with disinfectant solution. At the end, you want to know if all the measures have been successful or not, and you have to retest all the people. And this is the way how you can eradicate the virus, like it has been successful in SARS, but it will be much more difficult in the coronavirus. Next. This is a nice comparison you can see. This is the difference between Hong Kong and New York. So Hong Kong and New York has about the same population. It has about the same population density. And you can see that Hong Kong in February 3 closed down the border to China, and they have very drastic measures with quarantine of the population and with surveillance where the people are going and if they stay at home or not. And at the end, you can see the result of infected people and the huge difference in the death toll between New York and Hong Kong. All the measures proposed, they work, even in a densely populated area like in Hong Kong. Next. Next. So there are a lot of unknowns. I must say the first one is the medical treatment. You have anti-HIV or anti-Ebola drugs, which so far have not been as successful as we hoped, like remdesivir or so. It has shortened the hospitalization. There is a combination of chloroquine, Citromax, Ceretrix, which is a cyclooxygenase inhibitor type 2 and early anticoagulation. This has been published by Chinese, by Italian groups, and by Raoul from Marseille. I will still say something about chloroquine because there are many negative reports about chloroquine. I don't know why. Ivermectin is an antiparasitic drug which is available as a skin ointment against rosacea. It only has been tested in vitro, but it gives some hope for in vivo. Besides, we don't know if this virus will come back as a seasonal recurrence. We don't know if the virus will further mutate and become more dangerous like the second wave in the Spanish flu. We don't know if the virus will stay endemic in our society. If we only can fight it having a vaccination similar to hepatitis B, if we will have antibodies against corona, or if the solution will be to have a short antiviral treatment with a combination of medications, such we have it long-term for HIV, short-term to fight COVID. And there are some reports which predict that surveillance measures will be eventually necessary up to 2024. Next. If you are going to use, in fact, chloroquine and Citromax, you have to consult your cardiologist. That's very important. You must study the electrocardiography if there is a long QT syndrome or not, or if there are some abnormalities in the ECG. So don't start this medical treatment without consulting your cardiologist and doing an ECG. Next. You know, this is a very interesting slide I got yesterday from Italy. This is about the effectiveness of chloroquine. You can see the red curve. This is the cumulative number of patients needing intensive care treatment in Italy, the red one. And then they started very early, chloroquine and Citromax treatment still on the ward, and you can see how they could decrease the referral for patients from the regular ward to the ICU. And what you can see, the blue curve is the curve from Great Britain. So if you are going to treat with chloroquine, Citromax, and early anticoagulation, you have to treat very early. If the patient thinks he has a common cold, which becomes more difficult, probably he should see a doctor. At that time, you have to start. If you start later on, I guess this combination will not be effective anymore. But I guess this is a very impressive slide, as the only good option we have today is to increase the number of patients going on the ICU. Next. So this is another problem. That's why I called COVID like a hydra, because it has so many different pictures. Maybe some of you know the Kawasaki syndrome. This is a syndrome, particularly in Asia, in young children, which develop auto-antibodies against the endothelium. That means the inner surface of the vessels. And now this is a Kawasaki-like syndrome associated with this coronavirus. And you should study this paper here I mentioned. They compared the number of Kawasaki syndrome in northern Italy in 5 years before the start of this corona pandemic, and then within 2 months of corona. And you could see there is a 30 times higher incidence of Kawasaki-like syndrome in children. The average age of children with Kawasaki syndrome is 3.5 years, and with Kawasaki-like syndrome from corona, it's 7 years or so. The treatment, fortunately, is established, but this is another problem with corona. We are not really aware what will be dimension. Next slide. There are also some long-term sequelae. This is my last slide. You can see in the left upper part, you see the so-called EVALI pneumonia. This is a pneumonia from e-cigarette smoking, and it's caused by inhalation of vitamin E acetate. In the left lower, you see a destroyed lung in COVID patient. This patient died, of course. And in the right part, you see a patient after lung transplantation who had a very rare rejected phenomenon, which is caused the restrictive allograft syndrome after lung transplantation. And what is very surprisingly, you can see that all these CT scans, they are similar. And this restrictive allograft syndrome has a very bad survival over a few years. So there are a lot of young patients. They had semi-tolerated COVID infection with some common cold, but later on, they got a very limited physical capacity. They had a decrease in the oxygen saturation. And when they had a CT scan, we could find terrible changes here in the structure of the lung. And this is another the dimension of this COVID pandemic, which we do not yet fully understand. So I hope I could show you that this COVID-19, for those who don't only have a simple common cold, but for those who have to go to hospital and to the ICU, it's an insidious disease with many dangerous consequences, even for the long term. Okay, my next slide. I still send you greetings from Switzerland. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this webinar. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you very much, Paul, for this very interesting presentation. It's actually the first time that I've seen the lungs of a COVID-19 patient who unfortunately died afterwards. It's really shocking, but also ending on an optimistic note, Paul, because it shows like a mountain peak here in Switzerland. So I do hope that we have reached the peak now in this pandemic in many countries. So I would like to ask all of you one opening question in this discussion, which is a quick assessment on how well the public health systems in all of our countries have been able to deal with COVID-19. Let me start with Ayub in Israel. Has the peak been reached, do you think, already? And how well has the government and society been dealing with the coronavirus? Ayub, you have to unmute. You're still on mute. Click the microphone button. Yes, now it's fine. Thank you.
I want everyone to know that in Israel, we crossed the corona before 1 month. And we do it very successfully, you know. And no one, at the beginning, the citizen, all the citizen in Israel and around Israel was in panic. But, and what happened at last, I think we win it. And only 220 people died. We lose them, but they are old, most of them after the 18, the 19, something that could happen with no corona. That means that the results excellent from our opinion, you know, and we do lot. We do lot for that from the beginning.
And Alexander, in Russia, we have seen that you've shown the statistics that some 3,900 people had died. Has the peak been reached, and how successful was the fight against COVID-19 in Russia so far, do you think? Alexander, yes, we have to unmute you as well. If you click on the microphone button, then we can hear you. Yes.
Yes. Dmitry, вы переведете? Sorry, it's my bad English. Дмитрий, вы переведете тогда?
Да, yes, I can. Sure.
В чем там краткий вопрос? Что и как я вижу, да, почему в России...
Да, какие вот факторы успеха в России, почему так?
Да.
We'll have a simultaneous translation by Dmitry here.
Yes. Как я уже сказал, это целый комплекс, как мы видим. Первое – это…
It's important to have a complex of measures simultaneously.
Первое – это государственная, достаточно мощная система здравоохранения, которая оказывала помощь абсолютно каждому человеку бесплатно.
First of all, of course, it's very important to have a public healthcare system which provides healthcare support to everyone free of charge, basically.
Второе – это система противоэпидемических мероприятий и служба, которая очень быстро реагировала на возникновение инфекции в очагах.
Second, what is important to have pre-arranged already anti-epidemic services and policies which can be deployed fast.
И третье, мы можем говорить, что на самом деле профилактическая направленность российской медицины, она была еще разработана 50-60 лет назад, но она традиционная, она осталась. И это очень важный подход. Поэтому, соответственно, мы смогли охватить, были резервные койки и системы лечения, и благодаря этой профилактической направленности мы смогли охватить помощью все слои населения.
And of course, we were lucky because preemptive nature of Soviet healthcare system helped. We had some spare beds and some infrastructure in place, which helped to speed up response.
Thank you so much.
Да, и мы очень надеемся, что в ближайшее время все мы кто-то получим вакцину, которая поможет людям всего мира.
And we all hope that we will get vaccine as soon as possible, which will help to the whole world.
We definitely hope so, and we'll get back to the drug issue in a second. Roin, what is your evaluation in Kazakhstan? Has COVID-19, been battled already, or are you not near the peak yet? What's the situation on the ground?
So we have about 10,000 people under the COVID-19, and peak is not reached yet. So it's I think it's we are expected in 1 month the peak of these problems.
But people have to be in quarantine as well, like everywhere else in the world, I guess, and everybody adhering to WHO standards.
Yes, we are trying to reach WHO standards. Government closed the borders of the country and closed the borders of the city, and there is some system how to people can reach from one country, from one city to each other. If you are doctor or you are nurse or medical, in terms of medical persons. So peak is in future, and government are trying to do their best, because it's very strange, very hard to say how it will be going on.
Paul, here in Switzerland, we've seen a slowing down in the infection rate, but just in the last 24 hours, we've had, I think, 34 new cases, and a child has also died. Are you optimistic that, you know, we have basically overcome the virus, or are you worried about the second wave?
Yeah, you know, it's difficult to say. I'm not yet sure. If the number of infected people will increase now, then for me, it's not a second wave. For me, it would be the second peak of the first wave. If we will have a second wave, it will take, usually for a pandemic, it takes 3 to 6 months. Like in the Spanish flu, it was about 5 months when the viruses mutated and did adapt better to the human being. It was much more catastrophic, the second wave. I would say that almost no one can predict what will happen now. It's completely impossible. I would say it's, and this is also the opinion of the colleagues in Northern Italy. They think that it will not be possible to eradicate this virus, because it will spread as long as you still are asymptomatic. I think we can contain it, but there will be some spread here, a major spread there, maybe in one city, 20, maybe 30, maybe after one meeting or so, or a football game, another 50. And then we have to take the local measure to bring the people into quarantine or so. I would wonder if we can really eradicate this virus quite quick on the one hand. On the other hand, a pandemia always is playing within a defined ecosystem. You know, a pandemia has a certain wave form, of course, and is limited through the entire ecosystem. And if you have initially the numbers of infected people, and you know the deflection point when the numbers are coming down, you calculate the rest of the pandemia. And there are some mathematical models. For Switzerland, they predict that the pandemia will end 6th of July. If this prediction will come true, I hope for my country, and of course I hope for all other countries as well, but we will see if this prediction will be correct or not. And otherwise, nothing is more difficult than to predict the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. By the way, to all the webinar participants, this is now the Q&A starting, so feel free to send us your questions either to Dimitri from the association, or use your Q&A button on Zoom on the screen to send us your questions in. Roy, you briefly talked about the digital healthcare system as well. And of course, a lot of people are saying that with COVID-19, we see a massive boom in digital healthcare sensors and appliances and new tools and apps and so on. Leapfrogged also in China, where a lot of digital innovation is happening in healthcare. What do the participants here think? Is this really kind of, you know, a massive move into the future, that we see a revolution in digital healthcare? What do you think? Who would like to take that question? Ayuba, do you think that, I mean, Israel is so strong in innovation and research and technology. Do you see a big trend now in digital healthcare, even more than before?
it's not discreet. In Israel, we have different technologies that we starting after the corona and before the corona. The European Union now give 50 million euro to come to the company that in a few months could give solution as a medicine for the corona variant. And of course, this is something that we have it, and we could give solution in the future for everything in Israel. So we have everything that, I mean, material that necessary for to attacks against the corona. But in the past, when we beginning the corona, we have a problem because we did not know much about this disease, and now I think we are the best state that in control that could give solution for the corona, including tests that we didn't have it at the beginning. Now we have everything around the testing. And also, as I say, we have also different companies that going to give solution of medicine for that. Of course, we also help in all the world. I'm exactly do everything to help any state that necessary was for them any material. And I think next time that we afraid that could happening again, that maybe in a few months could be against Corona in our area, we are not care because we have the power. But we care because this is something that is all the citizens care from that, all the citizens afraid from that. But we have the directions now to move to new world that be more successful. We successful also now, but I think we more than any state we could successful in this process.
Roy, in that regard, a lot of countries are now rolling out, tracking tools and contact tracking starting very soon, or they're already underway. What's the situation like in Kazakhstan, and what do you think about these contact tracking measures and apps and tools? Do you think that they will be efficient in the fight against COVID-19?
Yes, it's very important. Your question is very important. In general, the digital health is not new. You all know that about 5 years it's very important. It became more important and important. But now is the time to activate all of our resources, medical resources, medical brain, economical issues, that we should just connect these two very important side that we can do something. Because I am as a president of Silk Road Heart-Smith Society, we have about 9 countries involved in, and we are very interactive with each other. And there is some companies who are asking my colleagues, me personally, to do some startups that will help not only don't mean only the epidemiologic side. I mean in cardiology, in neurology, and etc. To give them some startups and show some technologies what they can after create and
and then
some
we need, of course, local and foreign investment as well. So hopefully we see much more investment in that area as well. Dr. Alexander, in Russia, you have mentioned in your PowerPoint presentation as well the importance of international cooperation in the medical community. Do you see a lot of this exchange happening right now, or because of geopolitical issues and tensions around the world, is there a lack of cooperation in the medical community globally?
Ну, вопрос, вот сейчас какая-то кооперация продолжается, или из-за этих санкций, из-за каких-то внешнеполитических вещей осложнилось взаимодействие по медицине? Как вы думаете?
Да, безусловно, это усложнилось. Мы с моим другом, профессором Полем, да, не можем даже встретиться несколько месяцев, обменяться мнениями. Ну, переведите, да.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There are of course some complexities, but mostly this complexities relates to quarantine and isolation measures. For instance, I cannot meet my friend Professor Fox for several months already.
Yes.
Да, но одновременно возрастала роль того, что я говорил, телемедицины, новых технологий. При этом телемедицинские технологии должны быть расширяться не только между пациентом и врачом, но, безусловно, и как коммуникация между всеми специалистами всего мира, докторами. Это очень важно, я вижу за этим будущее.
But at the same time, with telemedicine and remote tools are becoming more and more important now. And not just a connection between patient and doctor, but also connections between doctors themselves and with other participants of this healthcare industry. All of this is important, and now it's quickly being implemented.
И я считаю, чем быстрее мы это сделаем, медицинское сообщество, тем мы сможем более быстро решать любые мировые проблемы, в том числе и как по коронавирусу.
And it is very important now to build on these new technological principles, kind of healthcare practitioners community, so that global resources can be applied where it's needed to be applied in a rapid manner.
And I know that many of you already know each other, so I hope that this network can be further expanded and boosted as well. Paul, here in Zurich, I've recently interviewed the Roche CEO, Severin Schwab, who sits usually in Basel. And, you know, Roche and Novartis and Pfizer and all the big pharmaceuticals, of course, they're racing to develop this magic drug against the COVID-19. How optimistic are you that a drug and antiviral can be found anytime soon? They're mentioning, you know, towards the end of this year, next year. Do you think that this is correct?
I mean, one has to be realistic, you know. I mean, coronaviruses are well known since about 17 to 20 years. And when SARS produced a lot of dead people in Asia, there were about 22 companies which looked for a vaccination. And so far, there is no vaccination approved for SARS. Okay, the industrial companies lost the interest because there was no SARS patient anymore. But nevertheless, what you have to state for now is never, ever someone has found a vaccination against the coronavirus. This is point number one. This is reality. But nevertheless, today, there are more than 90 companies looking for a vaccination against a coronavirus. With regard to a medication, probably, I don't think that they will find a single drug which will be helpful and kill this virus, because that's almost never found for any virus. It might be that there is a combination of medications necessary for short term, like against HIV. What we need a test which every citizen can buy in the pharmacy, like a test for pregnancy. He has this test at home. If he gets a common cold, he should make a test. If it's COVID positive, he is calling the family physician. The family physician is coming home and he is bringing a certain combination of antiviral drugs to this patient who will stay at home. That, I guess, will be the future if you don't find antibodies in vaccination. And so maybe you can turn this disease, which might lead to hospitalization and to stay on ICU, into a disease which can be treated in outpatient style at home. Probably this might be the future. Of course, I wish for everyone that antibodies and vaccination will be done as soon as possible, but might be that it's still a long way to go.
And also that it is going to be affordable, because a lot of these tests and drugs might be very expensive. And then you have developing countries, frontier markets, where these drugs could be really too expensive for the vast part of the population, isn't it?
Yes, of course, that's a major point. You know, there is some fight about chloroquine, you know, because it's very cheap. And some say that the pharmaceutical companies, they don't have interest that COVID is easily treatable by a very cheap drug. And that's why there are a lot of negative comments about chloroquine, and it looks a bit like conspiracy theories. I don't know if it is true, but if I look on the results, then I guess that the chloroquine treatment, which is the cheapest available now, should be better investigated now with maybe a double-blind randomized study to have real results. That would be really a winner. And if I look on the paper, on the publications of Professor Raoul in Marseille, he published now more than 1,000 treated people. His mortality rate is 0.75%. And this is quite successful. And probably we will see which drug at the end will prevail.
Ayub, if I may get back to you, you have been the communications minister in Israel, and a lot of countries have been doing a great job when it comes to calming the population, reassuring them, you know, don't panic, stay at home. And we've seen quite surprisingly positive, you know, feedbacks and reactions from the population. They're really listening to governments. What was key in this messaging, do you think, from governments, not just in Israel, but around the world, to really, you know, calm people down and not to make them panic?
Look, in what happened in this worm, I call it worm because this is more worm than other worms of the world. And what happening? The citizen was in control, because when something is this danger, people have to be in the same direction of the leaders. Who is the leader? The government. And in what happened in Israel, absolutely it was in control. But I'm looking about around us in the Middle East, and the same things. And something happened that people understand that this disease more difficult and more danger than anything.
And we have to protect ourselves and the others. So this kind of social responsibility, right?
Right, because that's what happened. I'm sometimes looking about the organization of terror here, that like Hamas and Hezbollah, and what happening? Suddenly they are afraid they are not afraid for anything.
Let's not get too much into politics, Ayub, but I would like to finish because we have only 2 minutes left right now. Going once more back to Kazakhstan. And Roin, what do you think are the next most important steps to take in your country in order to really make sure that the you know, infection rate is going to come down?
It's a very hard question for me, because I think vaccine is first, but as we know, we are limited in time and we have no time for this. I think social distance, and these 5-6 recommendations, general recommendations, what we can to just reach up, it's very important. There is my answer now. I will answer this question in 2 months.
Okay, we'll get back to you for sure. So our
Okay.
time is almost up. Unless anybody else would like to add something from the participants, we would then close our webinar. This was Mr. Ayub Kara, President of the Economic Peace Center in Israel, joining us. Thank you very much. We had Dr. Alexander Bragin from Russia. We had Dr. Roy Rekvava from Almaty in Kazakhstan, and we've had Dr. Paul Robert Vogt from the Harris London Clinic in Switzerland. My name is Martina Fuchs, and of course, a big thank you to all the participants, and also to Dimitri in the background from the Great Caspian Association, who was doing the translation as well and helping us with the organization. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay healthy and safe, and have a great weekend.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Health.
Bye-bye, Ayo. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Okay.